And welcome back to another edition of the Twins Wrap here on this Tuesday afternoon. Derek Hanson with you, along with the television play-by-play voice of the Minnesota Twins, Dick Bremer. And the Twins lose today, 4-2, I should say. The Twins actually were down 4-0, came back late. And one thing that's kind of funny is you and I were texting, planning everything for this afternoon. I said, is it 9 innings today? Because you just don't know sometimes in the spring training, do you?
No, they're trying to be as cautious as they can in the hopes that we'll have a full regular season. So, hey, why not? I mean, whether they play 6 innings or 9 innings, as they did today, the regulars typically were out by the 6th inning, last week anyway. And they'll get stretched out into, playing full 9-inning games here in the remaining time they have left at spring training.
Yeah, I guess a lot of things have come to stay now after the experiment with some things in the shortened season last year. Do you think this might be the norm now in March? Because I kind of do.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think what we're seeing here so far is that the pitchers are still way ahead of the hitters. And, we've all known that as pitchers get ready for a season, they can do a lot more on their own than hitters can. And so, and brings to mind, of course, how difficult it was for the hitters last year who had half the time to get ready for a season. And so I don't know whether that'll be adopted or not, because I think it's been proven again this year that hitters just need the at-bats. They need to see a lot of pitches and all that. And I think, the fact that it was 4-2 ball game, but there were only 3 or 4 well-hit balls in the ball game for either team today. So we'll see how that plays out.
I mean, and it is spring. They're trying to work on a lot of things today. I think that would be the case for Barrios too, right? I mean, he gave up 8 hits, but he's tinkering. Isn't that usually how it goes?
Well, yeah, and only a couple of those 8 hits were well hit. There were some 5 hoppers through the infield and all that. So I don't think anybody's too concerned about that. And they scored a run in each of his 4 innings, but I don't think anyone's the least bit concerned as long as he came out of it healthy, which we think he did. Those things when they're when you have a game like that in the regular season, well, then it's natural for fans to go, oh, hey, what's going on? 2 hits an inning, that's not going to cut it. But a lot of those were just bleeders through the infield today, and it's a spring training game. So I'm sure he'll be ready to go.
One of my first years covering the Twins on a spring training, I learned that lesson early with Kenny Rogers was having a little trouble, right? And then he kind of asked me, he goes, I was just messing around today, trying to figure some stuff. And then, he turned out to, it was well worth it when he signed. I think that was 2003 because it all worked out pretty well. And that's where I kind of learned, don't read too much. You can read a little bit, but not too much in what happens in spring.
Well, I had a similar experience with a man who just passed away a few days ago. Réal Cormier was a relief pitcher with the Red Sox. And this is, 15, 20 years ago, I suppose. And he had an inning and he threw like 25 straight breaking balls. And I thought, well, this guy doesn't have a fastball. He's not going to last very long. Of course, he went on to pitch 10 more years, but his outing, and this was, again, almost 2 decades ago, was designated to just work on his breaking ball. And he did that, and it didn't look real pretty, but presumably he got some bugs worked out.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. You learn a lot down there just kind of messing with how these guys are trying to get ready and prepare for the regular season, that's for sure. Another guy who just got in with everything going on is JA Happ, and I think that was nice to see. I think they were pretty happy with his 2 innings yesterday, right?
Yeah, his 2021 and Twins debut yesterday seemed to go fine. We may see him. I'm down here because we're televising some games. The first one I'm working is Saturday, and he may get the start in that game, and I'm sure all eyes will be on him. He's a veteran. You worry less about that, but of course he got a late start because of COVID, and so we'll see whether it's Saturday or Sunday, if he gets 3, maybe even 4 innings in the hopes of trying to stretch him out and get him ready for the season.
The rotation's rounding out pretty well, isn't it? I mean, I'm and the more and more we get to this, you just kind of always wonder about the 5th starter sometimes, but it looks like everything is, we're sitting in the middle of March right now, and as a fan, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Well, I think they're going to be in great shape because you've got, of course, Maeda, who's going to be the opening day starter, then Barrios, and, Pineda, whatever order they follow after that. I think this organization is deeper in pitching than they've been in a long, long time. So, yeah, I think by season's end, Twins fans should have every right to expect that, the pitching will be one of the reasons this team is supposed to be really, really good.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the biggest thing that we always say is health too, right? As long as those 5 guys can stay healthy, that's one of the key factors.
Yeah, particularly on the pitching staff because, you know, they had a 60-game season last year and went through a lot of pitchers. And it's going to be interesting to watch, as I think we talked about last week, how teams handle the workload, particularly for the starting pitchers. But there's going to be an awful lot of traffic back and forth between AAA, maybe even AA in the big leagues, as teams will need innings pitched. And that, again, is where the Twins development that has St. Paul, the Saints, as their new AAA team, is really going to come in handy for them.
Yeah, no question. I mean, is the 5th spot set for sure right now?
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people early on thought, well, maybe Lewis Thorpe has a chance, but now Lewis has been pitching out of the bullpen an inning or so at a time, which doesn't mean, of course, that he might not be an opener for the Twins out of that 5th spot. I think what will happen, Derek, is a lot of teams are going to go with a 6-man rotation, and there might be 7 or 8 men in that rotation because I do think the opener concept, which was used first extensively a couple years ago, adopted by even more and more teams last year, I think given the circumstances this year, we'll see the opener used more and more this year than we saw even last year. So I would guess that, they may have 5 starters they want to use, but I think we'll still see an opener be used rather extensively.
That's very interesting. Let me ask you a little bit about the other side, offense. I know Donaldson had a couple of hits today. And just, again, when you look at these guys, much like we have the last couple of years, and the addition of Donaldson, unfortunately, he was hurt so much last year, it is just frightening what this lineup, again, is capable of. I mean, it's rock solid 1 through 9.
Yeah, but there are guys now, of course, that are a little out of whack. I mean, Buxton hit a home run the other day, but he missed some time and was late on some fastballs today. Sano hasn't gotten locked in yet. Some other guys are, Sano really trying to get his swing figured out. And so it'll be, they've got another week and a half or so left down here. And the hope is that, some guys will get some bugs worked out. By the time we get to Milwaukee, the team will get to Milwaukee on April 1st. They'll be ready to go.
How much scrutiny do you think will be around the baseballs? Because it's not very often where, there's always rumors and speculation about a previous baseball, a year that it might have been quote unquote juiced or whatever. And to say, I mean, going into the season to admit, hey, yeah, we're changing the baseball, that's pretty unheard of. If home runs are really down, that's going to get talked about a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we'll have to wait a good long while to come to any conclusions about what the ballistics of the baseball are this year because, last year we didn't get the season started until the end of July, and even in Minneapolis and Detroit and Chicago, the weather was warmed up. Well, now, early on in the season, we're going to be starting on April 1st, and there are going to be some cold weather games to be played, and, the ball just doesn't fly as far when the weather is cold than it does when things have heated up. So let's be a little careful about trying to draw conclusions about the baseball and why it's not traveling as far because we're having hopefully a much more typical baseball season this year than last.
Yeah, hopefully that is the case. That is for sure. That is one thing that's nice about opening Milwaukee. I mean, I don't miss the Metrodome for baseball at all, but knowing that you're going to play games most likely is a nice deal.
Yeah, and it's easy to set things up, too, now because every team in baseball, for their opener, they have an off day the next day. So if for some reason that there would be a postponement, you can play that game the next day. Well, we know at Miller Park, and unless the roof gets stuck open and it's raining or snowing, Twins will get that game in, and then they'll have that off day on April 2nd. And that should help the guys trying to, prep for both the position players and the pitchers and how to get through those early games.
It is strange they're doing it in Milwaukee, though, right? Because, I mean, most likely there's going to be a game on Friday, right? You don't have to worry about
Yeah, I've never understood that either, but that's the way it was going back to our Metrodome days. Teams just want to make sure because opening day is, if not a sellout, very close to it around baseball, and you want to make sure you get that gate in to get the season started on the right foot.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting with being indoors that will happen. Of course, the other factor along with that this year is, they're still going to be going through testing protocols for the next, foreseeable future. So that's another, angle on it too, right? If something happens there.
Yeah, I can tell you firsthand that the protocols in place are rigid, very inflexible. And I think since we talked last week, the Twins fired 3 minor league coaches because they broke protocol. And that's how serious they are. I went to a ball game here in Fort Myers for the first time today, and I had very strict rules to follow in terms of where I would access the ballpark. And when I do the telecast on Saturday, I'll have a designated route that I cannot vary from to get to the broadcast booth. Well, case in point, my broadcast partner on Saturday is LaTroy Hawkins. Now, he's also going to be in camp as a special instructor. And because of that, we will do Saturday's telecast with me in the broadcast booth and LaTroy at the end of the dugout. They don't want him up in the booth with the likes of me, if you will, for fear of LaTroy getting, contaminated with the virus and then taking it down to the field when he's working with the pitchers the following week. So we'll have a different type of a remote broadcast where I will be in the broadcast booth and LaTroy will be down at the end of the dugout. And I mention that only because that's how serious they're taking this virus. Yes, we've got vaccines now and we've got testing and all the things we didn't have last year, but they're still taking it very, very seriously.
Yeah, I guess that certainly makes a lot of sense. And that's one thing about it, because a lot of people right away when I said I was going to Florida on vacation, they said, "Oh, you're going to cover the Twins." I said, "They aren't going to let me anywhere near," because you know how I do it. I want to talk to some of the players and get the audience here ready for the season. But it'll be a while before we go into any clubhouse to chat with the players before games, I think.
Yeah, and I to be honest with you, Derek, and I know that's kind of the best part of your job too in covering the team. It's the best part of mine to be able to be there at batting practice and talk with Nelson Cruz about a couple of at-bats the night before or whatever it is he might be, working on in the cage, whether he's swinging a good bat or not, and we don't have that access. And I don't think that they're going to be too inclined, shall we say, to change the working conditions for the likes of us within the season. So I doubt that you or me or anybody else will have clubhouse or field access anytime this year.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case forever now, but I don't think it's going to happen again until 2022 if it happens, that early. And that's just my opinion, but.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that there's so much emphasis placed on the safety of the players. As much as we think we know about the virus and how it spreads and how it can be prevented and the vaccines and all that, there's just so much at stake. I don't think the rules of engagement, if you will be changed in the middle of this season.
Yeah, I agree. My final thing for you, there's so much going on here. And UND plays NDSU this week, and UND's ranked second, and the Mighty Bison are ranked fourth. So it's kind of busy around here this week, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So I haven't really followed much like some of the other teams. What is going on right now with the White Sox in Arizona and with Cleveland? Have you done much scouting as far as the division is concerned, or?
Well, I think everyone's expecting the White Sox to be the prime contender for the Twins in repeating as American League Central champions. The Indians got rid of a lot of talent, the likes of Lindor and others not going to be back. They've traded an awful lot of pitching over the last couple of years, Kluber and Bauer and Clevenger, so on and so forth. So, I think a lot of people in baseball are thinking, correctly or not, that the Indians will settle in around 500 and that it'll be the White Sox and the Twins with anywhere north of 85 and 95 wins fighting for the division title.
Well, I'm glad that you got to catch some live baseball. Obviously, I talked about the football game coming up, and we have the NCAA tournament, and high school tournaments are going on, along with spring training baseball. As you mentioned, you'll be on Saturday night. You think about where we were at 52 weeks ago, and you and I chatting about the coronavirus and no sports. It is nice to have that 180 in one calendar year, isn't it? It's just mentally.
Well, I tell you what, today I stood for the anthem, and there were fans in the ballpark, and I don't mind telling you, I had a tear or 5 or 8 running down my cheek because I vividly remember a year ago in Fort Myers when we all but were certain that the season was going to get delayed, disrupted, if it was going to be held at all, and I stood there with the packed stadium at Hammond Stadium for the anthem and wondering when I would ever see that again. And we had anthems before the games last year, but to see fans at the ballpark and listening to the national anthem, that was the highlight of my day today, and probably will be the highlight of my time down here this year.
Oh, that just gave me goosebumps. You mentioned that. I can't wait to get to Target Field. I tell you, it's been far, far too long. 2019 seems like a long time ago. My heavens.
Well, I made a comment to somebody on Twitter, I guess I did too, that I flew down here yesterday, and it had been just over a year since I was at an airport, and it seems like 5 years. There's been so much that has happened, surrounding the pandemic and beyond that. There's just been a lot of really significant events, and hardly any of them have been pleasant ones at all. But we're happy to maybe signal that things are returning to normal with a full baseball season.
Well, I'm sure people will be listening to the UND NDSU game and flicking on the channel right away to be catching a little spring training baseball with you and LaTroy on Saturday. Thanks so much for your time, as always, and we'll talk to you again next Tuesday.
Yeah, we're used to competing with spring football, just a different brand of it.
Yeah, this is you have appreciation of this because I think you've followed this to say that with UND starting 4-0, and the mighty Bison, dropping to a team that UND defeated, you can imagine what it's like right now. I'm sure Dave St. Peter is bouncing off the walls right now as a UND grad. So, yeah,
it's good that the players are able to play and the fans are able to follow it, and let's hope that too. And it's out of season, a way of signaling that things are returning to normal.
You bet. Dick, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it, Derek.